I would say Russell Wilson owned the 49ers. I mean, ownage over every coach, specifically Kyle. 2-0 last year were just major blows, and he was just, there was no answer for him. He could run left, he could run right, he could throw short, he could throw deep. It was like you were playing Russell Wilson.
He could be on a bad team. He could be on a good team.
It didn't matter. You know, I would say no team celebrated as much. And the NFC West is very, very happy, the 3 playoff teams. But the 49ers have to be the happiest. They never – now, technically, they have to see him next year, but they don't have to see him like 8 more times over the next 4 years is a big deal. They have to see him once over the next 3 years, right?
Yeah. It's a huge deal. And they don't have to play him in Seattle. Like Trey Lance has to play in Seattle, and Denver's no easy place to play, which is where the 49ers are going to play him.
Well, I saw Kawakami tweet, like, the Niners, if they would have called, would have chipped in a pick, right? Hey, you want a fourth?
What would the Niners have included? Jimmy?
You see how Seattle gave Russell and a fourth? I think they would have included the fourth. Don't you? Like, if you called John Lynch, like, to get this done, you have to include the fourth. What would you say to John? Would you include the fourth?
Do you promise not to trade for Deshaun?
Yeah, you can't control that. But
I would have traded the fourth then, yes. Would you have thrown Garoppolo in? Garoppolo has to go to Seattle in order for this deal to happen.
Well, I think, yeah, you would do whatever it takes to get Russell Wilson out of there.
This is in the history of – we talk about the history of trades. When the Niners traded Joe Montana, the division did not rejoice because they had Steve Young waiting, right? When the Colts moved off of Peyton Manning, the division did not rejoice because they had Andrew Luck waiting.
Hadn't Steve Young just won the MVP?
Steve Young had won the MVP. When the Packers moved on from Brett Favre, the division did not rejoice because Aaron Rodgers was waiting next. I mean, one of the all-time your neighbor's pain is your glory. This is this is up there.
I would say this too. One thing I'd say I give the Niners credit for historically, a little like the Packers, a little like some of Andy's teams. They've just always felt like they've attempted to have a good backup. It doesn't mean it always works. You know, draft C.J. Beathard and he sucks. But they're always they really value the quarterback position. Pete Carroll, you would say, didn't really. He had Russell. Their backup was always irrelevant. So when this move happens, it's not like, well, let's see what Jordan Love got. They've never had a backup. Remember they had a couple year stretch where they had the kid from TCU? It's like, I remember watching TCU. I didn't even think that guy was that good. They never gave a shit about the backup quarterback. This year, it felt like, yeah, they had like Geno Smith. It's like, good luck there, buddy. But they never draft quarterbacks. This is just like, it's all for one. Like, say what you want about the Packers. They did attempt to have a contingency plan. Say what you want about Belichick. He did attempt with Jimmy Garoppolo to have a backup plan. Seattle does not even thought about it. Like, they was like, yeah, we'll play with Drew Lock. They just, it feels like they don't really value that position besides just, yeah, Russell's our guy. And now it's just, that's where it feels over. So if you're the Niners, like, you will gladly play Drew Lock. You will gladly play any draft Kenny Pickett. Please take Malik Willis. Do whatever you want. Now, if they were to get Deshaun Watson, that would be an immediate problem for Kyle, for Sean McVay, and for the Kingsbury, right? That would be a problem for the NFC West because you would be like, well, Seattle's right back in the mix. But as long as they do not do that and just play with, you know, Trubisky or whatever they're going to do, draft a guy. Sorry,
I think you got to play. If Drew Lock's in this trade, you're playing with Drew Lock.
Now, unless you draft a guy or something, yeah,
draft a guy. But to me, like, you're not bringing in Mitchell Trubisky if you just brought in Drew Lock.
Drew Lock's pretty terrible. Trade. Drew Lock's pretty bad.
I know, but maybe, I mean, he's part of this trade. Why? Just because Denver, we got to get him out of here.
Yeah, you do need who's going to play quarterback for you.
I know. That's
what I'm saying. They do not ever have quarterbacks, so it's not like to me the Drew Lock thing is more of a necessity.
Has Russell Wilson been the single greatest? I mean, Aaron Rodgers has not tortured the 49ers, right?
Well, I was thinking about it today, guy. When he resigns, that's a big deal, and that means they're good. The Niners have, I mean, Kyle's beaten them how many times? Twice in the playoffs. Like he's been their quarterback during that time. Like they have beat Aaron Rodgers 4 times in the playoffs. He's beat him a couple times in the regular season, but you'll always take regular season losses for playoff wins. He has not torched them by any means.
No. Russell has been their tormentor. You said the record earlier, right?
16-4.
16-4. I mentioned Barry Bonds earlier because I pulled it up with the intent to use it here when you talk about 16-4. I mean, that's like Barry. I don't think Barry hit 800 against anybody. And Barry owned a lot of people. A lot of people. Barry owned Andy Ashby. You remember Andy Ashby? Barry had a 377 batting average, of 514 on base. His OPS was 1,363. He hit 7 home runs off of Andy Ashby and walked 15 times in 53 at-bats. Owned him. 80% win rate against another team? 80%.
And doesn't it feel like sometimes they always go, quarterback is not a win-loss. There's not a win-loss stat for quarterbacks. Well, this one there kind of is because he's dominated.
Yeah, I would say
dominated.
This is not pitchers. I think quarterbacks is way more win-loss than, say, a pitcher's stat.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't always had the best players around him.
No. Well, him and DK felt like, regardless how weird it's gone for them in a couple moments the last couple years, they play well against the Niners. Like those two. And Lockett. If you told me how many touchdowns does Lockett have the last 5 years against the Niners, I would guesstimate 11. Could be off, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah, how many of his touchdowns were 30 yards or more on a 3rd down and 17?
Lockett has torched the Niners. Those deep bombs from Russell. Again, it's the ball that leaves your TV screen where Jimmy, we've learned this thing's going to get picked. With Russell, this is a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, it leaves the top of the TV screen for a while. It's like, where is that thing?
He's, if not the best, he's top 2 or 3 greatest deep ball thrower in the history of the league. His deep ball is just a thing of beauty, right?
Yeah, it's one of the best. And I also think part of what makes the Niners really good is their pass rush. And despite the fact that his offensive lines, he's had some really bad offensive lines, he's part of his skill is he makes up for that. This year he didn't. This year was weird. This year, you remember, was it the Eagle game? He took that weird sack. Was it the Eagle game?
You thought he was chubby.
I thought he was chubby. I did.
He looked chubby when you saw him at Stanford?
It was hard to tell because he was wearing a sweatsuit with like a zip-up sweat jacket. And those things always kind of bunch right here. If there's a zipper. It's why I don't like a full zipper hoodie because they bunch. Any belly you have looks even bigger.
Yeah.
And
it'll expose you.
But that's what he was wearing. I remember thinking like he didn't look like his most fit self. But then I saw a video of him yesterday or 2 days ago doing some running. Did you see that video? I don't know. It looked like it was in Hawaii or something on a football.
He looked good. Didn't he look pretty good?
He looked good. So maybe he just put on the James Harden suit, got himself traded, and now he's back in great shape. But incredible for the Niners. There is in the chat, and as expected, you and I plan to talk about this. What does this do for Trey Lance? Well, he's got to be better than the Seahawks quarterback this year now, which I don't think we would have said about him when Russell Wilson was the guy in Seattle.
Well, you would say going into next season, if Russell had not been traded, before it's impossible to know what was coming in his improvement. He would be the 4th best quarterback in the division. And anyone listening knows this ain't no Kyler Murray show. But Kyler Murray has accomplished. He's just been in the league now for 3 years and been pretty good, right? He's had some low moments late in the season, but Trey Lance now, to me, has more even added pressure on him because the Niners have now added pressure on them. Like this is... Guy, they were a 10-win team, and they went 0-2 against this team. So, to me, the expectations are going to be to beat the Seattle Seahawks. We've seen the 49ers, they can rack up other wins. They've struggled to win these games, right? And you look at some of these teams like Dallas. How do you get to 12 wins? You take advantage of your division. You go 5-1, you go 6-0. New England did it for years. The Niners have been competing to win 10, 11, 12 games and going 3-3 in the division, 2-4 in the division. You add 2 more wins. If I tell you right now that the Niners sweep Seattle, wouldn't you say their over-under wins would be 10.5?